Okay, happy Thursday. You can see here, you might notice a slightly different view. Things have been moved slightly. And now you can see behind me, there's Bruce. You wondered if Bruce was a real cat after all. He is indeed real. We'll see how this setup works. Sorry if I'm going to be doing a lot of this, just wiping my head, but it is hot as a Georgia nutsack in here. It's 90 some odd degrees outside. I just got back from picking up my daughter from school, and man, even though it's fairly frosty in the apartment, just that having worked up a sweat and then just being out in the sun, just blown my composure straight to. Yes, Ian. Ian is correct. If Bruce's was having some kind of review for the purposes of an increase in wage or promotion, yeah, he would not score well in the mousing category. Not at all. I thought we would do some finagling, workshopping, I guess. And hold on a second. Let me switch things over here. There we go. spin me a yarn. We'll try. We'll try to spin some yarns. So this we talked about this in the open table stream a little bit. Some questions of West Marches came up, and then Heroes and Homebrew, I think, was talking on the Discord about I guess he's getting ready to start a game or potentially start an open world or open table kind of game. Was looking at West Marches, in particular those kind of escape tables. And he brought up a point that he thought was interesting. I actually thought was interesting too. Was normally, and we talked about this also during the open table, right? That normally it's really all about escaping the dungeon. And I think most folks, I don't have a ton, I haven't watched tons and tons of West Marches stuff. But it seems to me from the materials that I've perused upon West Marches that the kind of wilderness part of getting back to town is kind of hand waved. They usually don't worry about that too much. Just if you can get out of the dungeon, you can kind of get back to town. But having had the little convo with Heroes and Homebrew today, and then just kind of thinking about it, I was thinking about, well, I don't want to go. So Heroes and Homebrew had the idea maybe of having basically kind of multiple tables. Okay, now you've escaped the dungeon. Now you have to get back home from the dungeon. And while I appreciated the idea, what I did think was that, well, which I didn't mention in our chat, is one, I think that when you're rolling multiple times, multiple tables and whatnot, you're you're inviting bad results. It's just because the good result doesn't really do much over the long haul. If the best result is, hey, you get back to town safely, then okay, that's okay. But there's just more opportunities for the really nasty results to come flowing into in there, and then you can end up with a bad, you can end up with sort of you just have a lot more room for bad things. Now maybe that's what you want to happen. You want people to really take the time to get all the way back to town at the end of a dungeoneering trip, in which case they say, yeah, I want to have multiple roles, therefore they'll really understand. Now, what I'm doing is, in a sense, multiple roles, but kind of not, or because I could pause this as one table, but I thought it might be neat if we had, let's say, a 2d6 roll. And that 2d6 roll would kind of have, instead of adding them together for, 2 to 12 or doing a d66 style table, well, you could kind of do as a d66 style table. But basically, we could, in a sense, have kind of dungeon results and then wilderness results. Because the other thing I was thinking was, if we're going to have wilderness results, it should be kind of meaningful in some way. Otherwise, you can really just. So I guess let me try to sort this out a little bit more. I don't have, I was trying to look for like a default West Marches table, but I couldn't find one. Though, of course, I was only looking the last minute, as is my want. So I'm going to make a really simple. And this does go to show, just, we don't need, if you can't find a table, just do one. So let's just make a really generic, escape. Oh yeah, Magnus, I saw you're posting about the Knave 2 ebook. I definitely want to hear your comments. So this will be a D6. Let's just say D6. All right. 1, Oh, that's not going to let me do that, is it? Okay, there we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so 1. Well, we'll start with 6. Let's go backwards. So just, and we'll use this as the basis for these other ones. We can call this, I don't know, lucky escape. Nothing goes wrong. Lose 1 item in hand. Lose 1d6 items carried. Let's see. See, Shellback Bow says if it's a full-blown West Marches setup, then having them roll dependent on wild, poorly explored, fully explored, patrolled areas, tiers could be an answer. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess yeah, all this stuff is really going to wildly depend on what kind of game you're running and what's going on in the world, right? How you're doing it. If you're doing it where you're doing a serious, if you're having a serious kind of hex crawly sort of dealio, then yeah, it might make total sense to have all kinds of different things variables enter into it. Otherwise, or you might not be, you might be just hand waving wilderness, really, just, okay, we're going to roll for an encounter and you're there kind of thing. Worst case is, yeah. So worst case scenario, right? Doom. I'm just going to call it Doom, right? You're dead. You're gone. Oops. Why did it do that? Okay. So let's see. 1d6 hit points damage, or maybe I'll just say suffer okay. So here's an initial list. So worst results, I'm gonna call it Doom. If you want to kill them, I don't know if I want to do that in that kind of campaign, but it's totally up to you. Okay, but I'm gonna call it Doom because yeah, it's the worst. You maybe you're captured. Well, so here's the other thing, right? We want to make sure. I guess this is why it comes running. We want to make sure that we're kind of honoring the West Marches thing. So the West Marches has a particular setup. And let me know if you're not familiar with West Marches at all. I'm happy to go through some of it. But just generically, I'm not going through all the elements. I'm really just going to cover the elements that enter into this discussion as I understand it. We have a shared hub location. This is where you're escaping back to. So the idea is that you start in a town, hamlet, you go off on all your adventures, and then at the end of your session, you end up back in hamlet. And this is kind of the unbreakable rule, because the second part of this is that all the adventures start from the hub, and every player character is supposed to be available from the hub in any given session. So the idea here is that we don't have characters scattered all scattered all over the map, some distance away, moving. I mean, you could do that, right? But that's not the West Marches approach. There might be other approaches where you could utilize one-to-one time, and you could keep track of where people are in some kind of master hex map, and you could track each day that they're getting closer, moving further out, or just, you probably could track it some other way. But just from the West Marches perspective, whenever you start a session, and presumably just one session in a given real life day, that you're not having multiple sessions in one day, though I suppose you could have it, everybody's available. So whenever session begins, everybody's there. And the reason why this is important for the West Marches is, given that it's an open table approach, they want different players with their different characters to be able to mix and match however things allow. Maybe a character's too hurt and he can't go adventuring, maybe whatever. But for the most part, hey, you're there, you can go. Everybody can go. The other element is that the hub is also information sharing as much as people sharing. So, and I think one of the stories that came out, was in the tavern in the hub town. They had a table in which the map of the surroundings had been carved, and everybody would come back to the tavern and carve a new bit. So you had this kind of source of truth that was shared. So everybody comes back to town, kind of shares the information they got, and then the next expedition can go out with everybody be kind of updated on what's known. So those are the kind of things. For our purposes, it's really everybody ends back in town. And this is why you end up with these escape tables, because everyone doesn't always get back to town at the end of an adventure. Maybe you lose track of time, maybe just the going, you're on some insane luck streak, or you just want to keep pressing, but then, 10 p.m., 12 p.m., whenever you were at 12 a.m., whenever you end up stopping your game, oh no, we didn't get out of the dungeon, get back to town. Well, then what do? Well, you have to be back in town. So we're not going to role play out you leaving the dungeon because we don't physically have time. So you get a little bit of this table in which you'll roll on the table, and then this will happen to you, but then you'll be back at town, kind of thing, right? Okay. Let me know if anyone, if there's any other thoughts, or if I misstated anything, if you think I'm missing an important element. But given that, you end up with a table, and it might look like this somewhat, it might not, but basically, right, you're going to have lucky escape. You made it out without a scratch. Yay. Or, oh, nope, something really bad happened. And then generally there's kind of something in between. You can get more detail on these. Obviously, you can add more items, do different dice, all kinds of stuff. But for our purposes, I think just the kind of generic table, I think, is fine. Right? You escape, either lose something that's in your hands, lose something that you're carrying, probably the worst one, suffer hit points. And you can also have this that, we could put a note in here that let's see, that the results are escalating. Results escalate. Escalate, i.e., a roll of 4 includes 5. Something like that. I'd have to write this up. But basically, the idea is that if you roll 4, maybe we should just call this escape. Actually, this works better, right? If you roll a 4, you lose 1d6 items carried. You also lose 1 item in hand, and then you escape. Unless you had Doom, which is, essentially no escape. You do not get out. Maybe I should say this: results are cumulative unless a 1 is rolled. Shell Chapeau says, escalate like Eldritch Horror's Doom track. You could totally do a Doom track. Absolutely. I'm not going to, I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes here with what happens. And that's why I kind of like, maybe not just saying death, but with something else. You can have a lot of fun. If if you're running your West Marches in a particular way, your campaign, it could be, insanity, some kind of corruption. There's all kinds of things you can do if you don't want to just have them dead. And the one thing with these tables is they don't take into account your level, which you may like, you may not like. First level party goes in the dungeon, they're rolling on the same table. And 8th level party goes into the dungeon, they're rolling on the same table. Maybe you like it. Maybe you think like nobody is too high, is above getting just shanked in the dark. Could be one way to do it. Or you could maybe figure another way to moderate the numbers if you want to let high level players take a little bit more of a safer gamble with that. That's totally fine. Yes, and here, as Homebrew points out, you can absolutely make them specific. And that's why I kind of like giving results that are sort of generic in a way like this stuff, because you can always create fiction around that. And yeah, sure, if you're in a particular session that has a particular hazard, or if there's a particular evil, you could have something like, the evil cleric that you guys were trying to foil, that you didn't get down there far enough, on the way back he cast, and you're cursed, something like that. My new game system, shanked in the dark. Absolutely. Okay, so now we have our we've got this generic escape table that we can use. So now what I thought of is we're going to have, you would roll 2d6, and 1 would be for the, so here's what I like about this, I guess. First, a couple of reasons I like. If you have to escape the dungeon and head back to town, you can roll on both these tables and just do each one. If you're not running a dungeon or they're doing something else, but they're caught in the wilderness far from home, then you can just run the wilderness one. You probably could run them both, but you can have some fun with the differences. Now, I'm keeping things very generic. Something I was thinking about, I don't have it quite hashed out, is I wanted to have like I wanted to I kind of wanted to differentiate them a bit. If I'm going to have two tables, all right, because we could just use the generic escape table. We could just use that. Doesn't really say anything about anything, and that would actually work totally fine. But if I was going to have a wilderness table and a dungeon table, I kind of want to think about, well, why am I having two tables? Because they don't, like again, like if I'm going to roll twice, there's two chances that they're going to get a doom roll. Now, granted, it's a low chance, right? You got to roll snake eyes, but I think we've seen in anybody who's played gaming for any amount of time has seen those snake eyes roll up when you least want them to, or vice versa, get those box cars when the GM's like, well, I can only kill you if I roll box cars, and then they roll and they get box. Right? It's it happens. We could. It's always fun to go, oh well, it's only a 1 point whatever chance. It's like, okay, tell that to my friend who rolled a bunch of those or got a bunch of ones or whatever happened. So I'm curious, and this is kind of part of where I'm workshopping this. It's not a complete idea. I'm curious about how to do the wilderness part because I think it's an interesting idea. I like it. But remember, we got the same thing. So Brian Smith says protracted affair. The problem is, and maybe we should do something like this. The problem is that, hold on a minute. Let me fix. Whoops. No. Get rid of you. Let me fix this up. The problem is, and is that remember we got to keep in mind the West Marches. Keep in mind the West Marches bit, which is that they got to end up back in town. Can I just delete that? Okay, good. They got to end up back in town. Okay, here we go. So we always got to keep in mind we could call it our design goals, if you will, or our design constraints. Yes, it would be neat to say to the wilderness, hey, it's really protracted and it takes you weeks to get home or whatever. And maybe we could still do that. And maybe for some campaigns, we could do that. Well, there are bases. So Brian asking about the placeholder. They're kind of placeholders. We're starting with this generic escape, and we've copied it down here to maybe make changes. We might not make changes. The dungeon one and that one may be the same, but probably the wilderness one is where I'm thinking there's going to be the most differentiation. So I like the idea that in the dungeon, there's kind of the harm. Maybe this is where you get physically injured. Now, I just don't know what to do with the wilderness. Like I said, it may be a case where we don't need it. Like I like it in a concept, but this is kind of the workshopping parts. I don't know if there's something differentiating. So let me make a scratch pad here. Where's this? There we go. Let me get a scratch pad going. Let's get a scratch pad going. Scratch. I'm going to make it all caps. Scratch pad. Homer says, what if the session ends with them in the dungeon, rolled d6? They didn't get out of the dungeon, roll on the escape dungeon pit. Before d6, they got out of the dungeon, roll on the wilderness table. You could do that. You could have that. So you'd have kind of a two-prong table, kind of like a like how far did you get? Right, that may be the how far did you get? 1d6. Let's see. 1, not out of the dungeon. Maybe 1 to 2. Let's see. 1 to 2, not stuck in the dungeon. Stuck in the dungeon. 3 to 4, stuck. Or actually stuck. Yeah, stuck in the wilds. 5 to 6. Home. Made it home. Something like that. Let's see. Shellshack Bo says critical success in the dungeon skips the wilderness, or that chops off the negative results portion. Yep, that's one way to do it. Let's see. Brian Smith says Rangers and stuff could feel cool for helping succeed in the wilderness. Yeah, we could definitely have something. So I already thought about that, but I'll write it out now. I actually had considered that, right? I'll put some things here. Whoops. Damn it. Stop that. Hey, you. I'll put that in actually. Put it in here. No, not you. There we go. Mitigations. Let's see. A Rangers and similar characters roll with advantage. Okay. Bo likes a good flowchart. Well, I got you going with the flowchart. And then we can have mitigations here. Thieves and similar characters roll with advantage. And I can say parties of. I'm not suggesting everybody. I don't think I would have one roll for the party. I don't think I would break it down to individual player characters. I suppose you could. I'm not exactly sure if people do that. And people who have played or run West Marshals games, that's actually something I had never thought of. Do people roll on an individual PC basis, or are people rolling as groups? Right now, so the idea is you want to know better this dungeon, you trek through the forest of plunder, roll to escape the dungeon, and then roll to escape the forest wilderness. Something like that. Potentially that, Ryan, that's kind of what we're investigating. Can we come up with something that's interesting, not super punishing, or not, because like I said, I like the idea of flavoring things as the wilderness, but you could do that yourself. You could have one generic roll on the table, and you could, as a GM, say, this is what happened, given everything that goes on, and flavor it to suit whether it was the dungeon itself, whether it was the yucky swamps that the dungeon was in, or brigands on the road. You could kind of figure all that stuff out yourself. I'm wondering if we can kind of make something something kind of little system here, but something that's sort of fun, but is not just cruel and unusual punishment. Here's what Homo says there. Dinner's Day was having players who reached the end of the session without reaching town being lost in wilderness was a bit harsh, but also made real time a resource to be managed. Yeah, yes. So that was kind of the beginning of the idea, was looking at but the thing is, I do think so. The idea was having these roles and these tables as a way to encourage people to use time, real time, right? Because this is what it's all about. It's not the end. There's, your characters aren't in some particular fictional time crunch necessarily, but you are as a player. This is real time impinging, right? So in this, you're rewarding players for being good managers of their real game time and punishing them if they don't, which the original table does. Adding the wilderness, I like it just from kind of because these dungeons are in the wilderness, and why not? But only, right? But so I like that part of adding the wilderness in, but you could just use the same generic result and flavor it. and maybe we should, unless we can come up with something kind of good to do with that result. Let's see. Bo says that their house rule for Rangers at level 1, they increase the die code on getting lost to a D8, and then in 10 at a level 4 and at 12. Oh, okay, that's cool. All right, so we got some mitigations here, which I like. Maybe. So we're stuck in the dungeon. We have to roll on both tables. We're stuck in the wilds. We just roll on the wild table, or we make it home. And just if you're wondering, there's a 33% chance. Right, this is a 33% chance. These are all 33% chances. In case you're wondering about the odds. And I don't know if that. And you could decide. You could probably set this up however you like. Do you want to make it that the dungeon part has bigger? It has more. Obviously, the bigger this one is, since you're stuck in the dungeon. If you're using the system, we'd roll on both tables. That's kind of the worst result you want. If you're stuck in the wilds, you're only rolling on the wilderness tables. That's kind of a step better. And then obviously the best thing you could ask for is making it home. So whether you want to shade one of these worse than the others, we could make it 1 and then 2 to 4 and then 5 to 6 if we wanted to. I'm not going to worry too much about it, but it is, we want to try to keep in mind, right? Maybe I would say this, that some other, let's make another note here. Scroll this one down. Hey, Dustin. All right, so let's make we'll call this notes. So I think that maybe death, if death occurs at all, it occurs only if a 1 is rolled on both tables. All right, actually, maybe we'll, you know what? What is doom? Doom represents something terrible that has been unleashed or exacerbated by the fumbling actions of the party. Let's see. This could be if there is a any. What let me call this? Any let's see. Doom represents something terrible that has been unleashed or exacerbated by the party. Oops. Stop that. It could mean an antagonist's plans are moved forward or accelerated. I think that's not accelerated. A new difficulty introduced, or some other new Bane revealed. Okay. So there we go. Hey, well, I'm glad it's helping you out, Bo. I'm glad to be of service. Okay, so we're gonna I kind of like this. We're gonna define doom in a particular way, and then you can then hook doom in with any particular thing. If you roll double doom, i.e. doom in the wilderness and doom in the dungeon, then that would be extremely bad. But let me see now. If we go to any dice, oh yeah, an RIP Donald Sutherland, who passed away. Okay, let me see. Output 1d6 less than 4 and 1d6 equals 1. Or I guess and 2d6 equals 2. I think that would work for us. All right. So your odds of dying now. So remember, we come back here. You're only going to get stuck in the dungeon. Yeah, Donald Sutherland passed. Only stuck in the dungeon. I guess he was sick for a while. Not to go too far on tangent, but he does. He's been in so many things. Seems like up until now that it didn't seem like anything could be wrong. It felt like he was going to live forever. 33% chance you get stuck in the dungeon, and then you got to roll double ones. So we go with. Oh no, actually, that's even less than that, right? Because it's 1 and 2, not 1 and 3. Whoops. It's even lower than that. All right, so you're talking less than 1%. So 1 out of 100, someone's going to get killed, which I think is fine. If you want to make a more more punishing style table, absolutely, you're welcome to. But I think that's good. The idea, because I always kind of never feel right with just dying on these kinds of tables. I know you can prevent it by obviously getting your butt out of the dungeon, but it just felt like a little bit always feels a little bit to me like, oh man, it's a little bit much. So in this case, and you could even do something else different on a double doom if you want to, but in this case, you're down to basically rolling a 1 on a 1 out of 100, which I know can happen, obviously, but feel a lot better about that. And especially if you have a thief, if we're doing it at party level, then obviously having a thief lets you roll 2d6. Or if you're rolling individually, then if you have a thief, they roll 2d6 and take the better one. So even take that chance and really grind that. Of course, if you have a ranger or similar, they're doing it in the wilderness part. So, and I like this too. I like those mitigations also because it's if you're playing a West Marches style game, it encourages certain classes to be picked. Maybe rangers don't get all kinds of crazy stuff, but just having this, if you're going to be running that, and just having one of these guys just for this table, just for the bump they give in the table, is worthwhile, right? Because they can help you out of a jam if need be. Here's an Homer says, should the probabilities be equal, like 40% stuck in the dungeon, 40% stuck in the wild, 20% make it home? I mean, you could play with those however you like. The stuck in the dungeon is the worst of the worst, because you have to roll both 2 times. So I don't know if I'd want to, but again, and right, how it comes down to how punishing you want to be. I'm going to leave it alone right now, but of course you could take that number and adjust it however you like, or you can even add some modifiers for however you like. You could totally make that different. I'm just I don't know. I'm in this kind of D6 design phase right now, so I'm just like a D6. But of course, you could use a D20 or other table that gives you a lot more room if you want to add modifiers to it. You could, if you wanted to have it, you could do something here. Probably the one I'd be likely to want to do would be that however far deep you are in the dungeon, maybe is either the number of dice you roll, or it could be that, like if you're deep in the dungeon, you're rolling 2 dice and taking the latter one. Maybe that's a good way to do it. All right. Let's see. Modifiers. Roll a number of dice equal to the dungeon level that the party is escaping from, and take the lowest single result. Maybe that one. So you start making it more and more likely you get stuck in the dungeon the deeper down you are. And then you could even then play with those probabilities if you wanted to make it, since you're going to be rolling a bunch of dice, If you're down, maybe if you're on the first level of the dungeon, maybe even this should be lower because it's going to naturally, these odds are going to increase rolling with a whole bunch of disadvantages potentially. So you can play around with those. I'm going to leave it alone right now, but you can play with those a bunch. Well, we still have to we still have to consider what are we doing in the wilderness? So I don't want to just do more damage. Or maybe hit point damage is not the right word. See, the thing is what I'm conscious of. What I'm conscious of is, how many different variables are we going to bring in? And the reason why I'm conscious of it is because I'm here in a chat with you guys, and I don't know all the ins and outs of your games you're playing. For me, I might look at it and say, use something like, I don't know, exhaustion might be a way to do it. You take hit point damage in the dungeon, you take exhaustion in the wilderness. Maybe that's still a way to do it. Hey, Krister. You could still do the items potentially, though. Maybe there's something else. What else could you lose? Lose one ration, maybe. Lose one. And I'm wondering, let's see. I don't have the AD&D thing in front of me. Hold on a minute. Let's see. Do I have AD&D? Because I wonder, they got diseases, right? Yes, they do. But hold on. Because I know I don't have my physical book anywhere nearby, unfortunately. Let's see. Was that in the Dungeon Master's Guide? Diseases book? Let's see. Do I have the dungeon? Hold on a minute. I might need to just jump over to. I get to see my settlements table for a second, but I'm not ready to show. There's nothing really there yet. So that's okay. Let me see if I can drive through and download okay, my library. Looking for Dungeon Master. Oh. No, that didn't work. Publisher, Wizards of the Coast. Oh, okay. Right. Oh, no, not Ravenloft. No, not the second edition. Just give me first edition. Where's my first edition DMG? There it is. Download. Okay, no, I don't want you down. I don't want you to open it. Why do they always do that? Why do they always say open it in the browser is the first thing they want to do? Why? Why do you want to do that? I don't want you to open it in the browser. That doesn't. Okay. There we go. Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. Free League stuff is 50% off. You're right. I meant to post something about that earlier and I totally forgot. So good reminder. If you want some Free League gear now, Free League stuff, I should say. Okay, disease. I just want to know kind of what they do. I'm not interested in all their chances and whatever. What is it? What is it that they do? I think we have to roll for all. Oh, yeah, they got all kinds of crazies. What is this? Can we just have a generic disease? This is, here's kind of why I got I love the DMG, and yet it also sometimes it frustrates me a little bit because, look, I cannot deny that having all of these different diseases is awesome. But I can also say that most of the time, I don't care. It's just not that important to me which one of these comes in. And, I just want a simple disease. Just give me I think my ultimate thing would be if we could have a simple disease and then the table. So if I want something more complicated, I can then come and roll all this stuff. But I don't need necessarily for this case. I just want a generic disease. I don't need one. I don't want it to kill you. But not necessarily. Well, not at least not at first. But I just don't need all that granularity. And kind of the 1E model is to kind of give you all that granularity, whether you want it to or not. And that's something I think I like about having the powers of both the basic set or OD&D itself, and then the AD&D, and also having kind of as your chassis or your original game, something like the White Box or Basic Expert, something like that, and then you have all the stuff. You have AD&D, you have BECME and the rule or the rules cyclopedia to then backfill in any kind of extra you want, but that you can kind of start with a nice, neat level. Because in this case, you get all this stuff. It's like, man, I just want a simple disease. I don't need all that. What is do I need to go grab the player's guide too? What is do they have disease in there? Is a spell cause disease? Or was cause disease just have you roll on these same tables? Okay, so I just want all right, so here's our says there must be a third-party supplement for diseases. There probably is, but I mean, this is already, I feel like this could be your third-party supplement already. It's giving me everything I want. I just want something a little bit, this is too much for me, is the reality. Like, can I get half of this? So here are 3 things we can use. All right, mild, severe, terminal. All right, so we've got save. Well, let's see. Hold on a minute. So we've got mild. Well, this is severe. I'm just going to put terminal and then mild. And I'll have to figure. We'll get rid of this ration stuff. Okay, I got it. Let me zoom in here. So my thinking is save versus, I think it's death is what we do, right? Or what would be or become ill with a mild disease. Let's copy and paste this a couple times. This is severe. Nope, thank you. And then this, well, actually, let's do it. We can do it a little bit better. Okay. Oh. Okay, here we go. All right, so first of all, save versus death. Let's see. On a failure, here's where it's going to get a little bit interesting. On a failure. Well, watch this. On a success, haha, you're not getting that easy. So you could save versus death, but it's kind of a sliding scale. Oh, I got that already. Don't need that twice. On a success, become ill with a mild disease. And then finally, yeah, sick, dead, or sick enough to wish you were dead. Yeah, well, at least somebody can protect. The thing is, you've got people with cure disease and things like that. So presumably someone hopefully can cure you. We'll go back and we'll read up on the diseases because I'm curious as to what they've got going on. If there's anything interesting there. Save versus death On a failure, maybe that one will just be like that. But let's read up on the diseases a little bit. Let's see what they've got. I'm going to bump this up. Okay. So as usual, let's see what happens up here. So we got parasitic infections, chance of disease, chance of, okay, unnatural aging. I like the idea that the idea of the disease in the wilderness, I think, is actually really good. It's right. We're getting the flavor. It's different. It's not just hit point damage. It could be kind of ongoing, but you can also be back in town. And theoretically, if you had to, maybe you can still go out. So if it's a mild, during the period of affliction, the character is unable to perform strenuous activities and rest. Interesting. I might need to change this up slightly. So we have some good. So severe is lowers hit point total to 50% of normal, totally disabled for 1 to 2 weeks, plus a further 1 to 2 weeks during which the body is in the mild state as the character recovers. Okay, these are pretty rough. These are pretty rough, probably rougher than I want, because given, remember, what we're trying to do ultimately is, as part of our design goals, if we can swing it, is we want them to be at least available. I don't mind if they're, so here's the thing. Going back to our design goals, or our design goals is not a word. Our what constrains us? Our design constraints. Going back to our design constraints, we must remember that they need to be available at the hub. Now, they don't have to be available at 100%. They can be available like, oh, I only got half my hit points, or oh, I got disadvantage on something through some kind of exhaustion mechanic. They don't have to be all the way there. That, to me, that's kind of not my problem, so to speak. But I want to make sure that they're there. So or they're available. So while you could probably make some kind of argument about availability, and they're on bed rest, but they're there, whether that kind of fulfills the requirements. I don't know about that, but I'm going to look at the spells, because I want to go back to, well, I guess I could just do a search. Where does disease come in the basic book? Oh, whoops, did I pass one? What does it say here? Once in contact, okay, this is green slimes. Anything before green slimes? Normal rats, the normal chance of disease. Okay, but what does disease actually do? Oh, that's it. 41, 41, 41. Lycanthropy disease. Okay, that's it. All right, well, I guess I got to go to expert. All right, let's see if expert's got what I need. Give me what I need, expert. Did that download? All right, hold on. It's tick, 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 ticking to download. Tick, tick, tick. Oh, and I'm just drinking kind of pretty warm apple cider for the working man at this point, or it's apple cider water mix. I guess would be the reality. Okay. Hopefully, this will give us some inspiration. Here's what Homer says: if you've had to roll on these tables and your character survives the adventure again, they will definitely affect hiring more hirelings and what they will demand as pay. I mean, if you get to town all diseased, sure. I wouldn't want to hurt them too hard. What happens in the woods stays in the woods. People don't have I don't like to give the NPCs kind of perfect information of what happens to the party out in the wilderness, but if there's a way that things become known, maybe other hirelings talk, or like I said, they come back to town and they're basically half dead and their bodies, I don't know, riddled with horrible diseases, then that's very visible, then sure. But remember, we got to be careful that we don't create stuff that just discourages adventuring. And I know you could say, well, if they just do everything the way they're supposed to, then none of this would ever happen. Sure, but it is a game and it's supposed to be fun. And I can't imagine playing in a West Marches style game and always getting out and back to town. I mean, I feel like that would be an immense achievement. Now you guys can tell me this. Oh yeah, all the time happens all the time. People just motor their way back to town and they get there. But man, all right, let's see. So there's cause disease. Oh, it's okay. The victim is -2. In addition, his or her wounds cannot be magically cured. Natural healing will take twice as long as natural healing. Okay, so there we go. We're going to use this one. As much as those ones in the DMG are awesome, this is a lot more just easy to manage. Easy to manage. So let's, whoops. So let's, oh no, wasn't it? Okay, this is disease. Let's throw that here. Now, so I'm just going to copy this in. Okay, -2 on all hit rolls. So here's the base disease. Or mild. Or no, yeah, so I would want them to maybe have, because this is the magical one. So I'd want to have them be able to save some kind of save, and obviously we're not doing it. So let's go. This will be mild. The victim is -2 on all the hit rolls. That's fine. In addition, his or her wounds cannot be magically cured. That's also fine. And naturally, it'll take twice as long. That's also fine. And I'm gonna. Well, I want to save that. Let me. I think I gotta copy and paste this again so I can save it, because I feel like and we could have mild. Oops. Severe, and then what was the last one was called? Terminal. Okay. So on the mild, oops, just to make it a little bit cleaner, I'll do a little. You really cannot see that bold very much, Ouija. You should do a little bit better with your bolding here. Okay. So mild, well, -2 to hit points is good. And then we're just going to go, let's do -4, and we're going to do -6. In addition, his or her wounds can be, I think that's fine. Disease, no, this is the part. Disease will run its course in, just going to call it 1 to 6 days. 1 to 6 days before that time. So it's mild, but while you're doing that, so for this first one, you catch a mild disease, you want to go up on an adventure, you can, but you're going to be -2. Magical cures won't work. That's a tough one. And natural healing is twice as long. So you don't really want to do it, but you could. You could do it. You got a cold. I'm going to just have them separate, so I'm not going to write them as chemo. I mean, you could, right? You could say, you know, as, I guess we could to make kind of shortcut, as mild, but the penalty on all to hit rolls is -4. The disease will run its course in, see, 6 to 12 days. No, you're it's not, you're not minus not -2 hit points. You're -2 on all to hit rolls. They say on, maybe that's what, so suffers 2 all to hit rolls. Okay, so severe, same as mild. Before that time. Let's see. I don't know if I want to do. See, one of the things I was thinking about, it would be, it's probably because I was starting to, you know, this is where I get in the weeds, right? From the get in the weeds, because I start thinking, oh, if it's a severe disease, could it get worse? But I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I mean, you could, if you wanted to make it more dynamic, then you could. Right, but I'm not. Because I am a gentle soul. As severe, but the penalty to all to hit rolls is -6. And this one, the disease will be fatal in 2 to 24 days unless a cure disease spell is cast on the victim. So this one's bad, but here's the good thing, right? So this is what I like about it. Okay, so you can catch this disease, and the disease can be bad, but you're in town where everybody's in town, so there's a good chance, you hope. Low levels, this is going to be brutal. At higher levels, it becomes more of a, it's basically at higher levels, what this is either there's a PC who also is in town who will be playing in the next session who could cure you. And you could, in table rules, whether you could have 2 players who aren't actually playing in the session or one of them who's not. Like if you played in the session on Monday when this happened to you, the other, the mid-level cleric with the cure wounds is playing the next day, but you're not playing the next day, if they could cure your guy when you're not there. Yeah, those are all kind of table rules. Whatever, right? But either becomes, you have to have, hopefully you have a mid to high level cleric around, or you're paying basically a tax to the nearest, you know, NPC, church, temple, cleric, whomever, who has access to that spell, which is kind of cool. I mean, it's a nice thing because that's kind of what we're doing, right? You didn't get out of the dungeon, so you're getting penalized a little bit. In this one, it can kind of act as a penalty, and that now you have to make some donation to the Temple of Palor so that they will cure you. Either way, from our standpoint, kind of mission accomplished. Yes, right. The minus, right, the penalty to hit is not awful. But what's bad, the bad parts is that you can no longer be magically healed, and natural healing takes twice as long. So if you came out of the dungeon with half of your hit points, picked up one of these diseases, you can't. You're going to have to sit out for a long time to get healthy. You can't swat. You can't guggle down some potions, guzzle down. You can't eat the healing herbs of estrogel. You're stuck. So that's kind of a big one, really, is that the magical healing, and even if someone's got the magical healing, you can't do it. You got to have cure disease. You got to get cured first and then heal afterwards. So if that someone's not available, you're kind of moldering away and you're going to be at that point. And then, of course, remember, even if you're someone that's like, well, I'm not going to be hitting any, I'm not going to be really doing to hit stuff because I'm whatever. It's like, okay, but what something hits you, or you get stuck into a trap. You started off and you had 6 out of your 12 hit points. Then some things happen. Now you're down to 3 hit points and you can't do it. And keep in mind, if you end up in a situation where you have to escape the dungeon again, well, if you're getting dragged down. So yeah, you're you're looking to pay to get some leeches. Yeah, but you literally have to get cured first, right? You need to be cured first and then leeched. So it's tough. It's tough, but it's not. I mean, I like it because it isn't crazy bad. It's workable. If need be, you can go and take the penalties and go in anyway. And if you wanted to be worse and say disadvantage or -2 to all rolls or whatever, like you could, right? You could absolutely do that. This is, I'm just taking from the expert set, and I think it's kind of, I kind of like that. It's nice. It's penalized. You're going to feel it, but you could still maybe go, which is kind of the point, because right, we want every PC to basically be available, and they're available. They're not going to be in a good spot, but they will be available. Yeah, exactly. They got some gold. Now they got to spend it. They wanted to get something, but now they're going to have to spend some money to get cured. So I think it works out pretty well. I think that works out pretty well. Let's see, but we still have something here about. Well, I don't know. Do we have any other effects we could use? What other effects could there be? I don't think there's anything else. You know what? Well, hold on a minute. Oh yeah, lose 1d6 rations. If no rations to lose, must lose hit points instead. That seems too much. Or does it just mean that you want to make sure you have rations? Yeah, I was gonna say. So here's how it's exhaustion. Yeah, I was thinking about exhaustion. What I was going to say, maybe you know what, the basic book might have it in there actually, because they have exhaustion. I think in terms of if you don't rest, party size, figures, resting. All right, so we'll just use. I'll do exhaustion. I actually like that. That's better. I was thinking about exhaustion before, but I was also thinking I didn't want to add a whole bunch of things in here, but then I already added diseases, so. For okay. Whoa, what did I do that? Well, let's add another. Gotta add another thing in here. Add it down here. Call this exhaustion. And exhausted character Exhausted character suffers a penalty of +1 till they rest for a full day. Rest. It takes a. We're just going to write this a little bit different. Takes a full day of rest to recover from one level of exhaustion. Okay. Something like that. Something like that. Yeah, we're not rolling cumulative on this one. That one seems a little bit too much. I feel like that would be adding insult to injury. Here's a number says a character's turned into a monster. Yeah, that could be your doom. Like that would be your double doom. I feel like your double doom kind of thing could be they become a monster if you don't want to do death, or if something more interesting shows itself. They're fighting a necromancer. Maybe they come back as a wight or a ghast or a death knight or something else, right? But all right, where are we at? So we're, I'm always pleasantly surprised when I always think, is this topic going to be enough to kind of carry a stream? And then it does. Fairly pretty much. Okay, what have we got here? So now we're kind of we'll what have we got? So we start off with our. So we're kind of wrapping this up. We're starting off with this West Marches constraints, which is got a singular hub location that everyone is sharing. Every PC is available. Doesn't have to be at 100%, but at least they're around, unless they're dead, right? Surviving PCs and all that. They're available at the hub for any given session. And the shared information thing, I don't know, I threw that in there, but it's not really, doesn't really pertain to this. Here's what Humber says they can easily be large in D6 tables. Yes, I'm on a D6 kick. That's totally right now. That's my own personal design constraint. Is I'm enjoying riffing on D6s. You could absolutely use all kinds of different dice if you wanted to. There is Bo says you've got 25 more minutes of work. Whew. There is no question you can do this with a bunch of dice. I've just been enjoying playing around with the different permutations of a D6. So that's kind of where I'm at. But yes, you could totally go bigger or smaller, however you like. Yeah, because you can do D66. But in our case, we're kind of doing, we have kind of a D66 sort of thing going, since we're rolling 3D6. And you could roll them all together, but we're just, we're doing them separately as opposed to pulling them all together. You totally could just kind of put these in one giant D666 or D66 or D666 table. We're just having them separate, which I do sort of like, because then if you just have a wilderness situation, you could just run the wilderness. Because like if they did get out of the dungeon, but they didn't get home, or you could just have the dungeon if, say, the dungeon was underneath the town. That's the kind of thing you're running. So yeah, there are plenty of things to do. In any case, we start off with a generic escape table that was basically Doom as the worst option. After that, suffering a D6 of hit points per level escaped. So if you were on the third level when you had to fire the escape table, you'd roll 3d6, so on and so forth. A little bit less bad than that is you suffer D6 hit points. You lose. This doesn't quite work either, the cumulative part, because you don't need to have all the suffering accumulating, but basically, might have to rewrite that slightly. Anyway, either you lose D6 hit points per level or just D6 hit points. You can lose 1d6 items that you're carrying, one of your items in hand, or you escape. And then we didn't do anything with the dungeon one. That's kind of the same, but we did offer the mitigation that if you have a thief or a similar character, they can roll with advantage, making Doom a lot less likely and making that a little better. I kind of have the feeling where maybe you're running this as a party, rolling it as a party, so everyone kind of suffers that shared fate, but you could easily roll it as individually. Oh, I forgot. Before you actually roll these, we roll to see how far you got before trouble struck. The worst one is you're stuck in the dungeon, which means you have to roll escape the dungeon and then escape the wilderness. Or did you just get stuck in the wilderness, or did you get stuck home? So if you got stuck in the dungeon, you'll roll to get out of the dungeon and then roll for the wilderness bit. You just got stuck in the wilderness, you'll just roll the wilderness bit. And of course, if you made it home, you don't need to roll at all. And if you wanted to modify it by rolling a number of dice equal to the dungeon level, it just would mean that it makes it more likely that you'll get stuck in the dungeon if you're deep down in the dungeon when you get caught, which is another mitigating factor for the party, in that maybe they figured they won't be able to get all the way out, but they certainly want to get out. If you're on level 6 or 7, you probably want to try to get back out as far as you can and not just call it quits. So it does put a little bit of a, hey, we don't have time to do everything, but let's see how far we can get before we have to quit. And then for the dungeon, we still have Doom. So that's basically the same as the generic one. And then just in case we don't know, we kind of created some idea of what Doom means. It might mean death, but I was thinking that maybe only if you double doomed, you'd get death. You can have some fun. Is that something terrible has happened or been exacerbated? I also think you could have something like a curse or some kind of guessing has happened, or quest, right? They make it out, but they've been put on a quest. Could mean that an antagonist plans to move forward, accelerate, new difficulties revealed, mains revealed. A curse has been placed. Has been placed. Or a quest or gesh has been issued. And then if you want to do something death or some kind of irrevocable change, I suggest it being kind of a double Doom event. And then the wilderness, we have Doom as the worst one. And then the next 3 are all about picking up some kind of disease, which I think is thematic to the wilds. And depending on how poorly you do and how you save, you could pick up a terminal disease, a severe disease, or a mild disease. And we have the mitigating factor of rangers or ranger types. And then in terms of diseases, they basically give you suffer -2 to your hit rolls. I might add something in here too about, say, disadvantage on D6 on your X and 6 rolls, but yeah, I don't even know if I feel that strongly about it, because something I like about these diseases that we just discussed is they're going to hurt you, but you're not totally crippled. So maybe I wouldn't even do that. So anyway, okay, so you suffer -2 to all hit rolls, and then your wounds cannot be magically cured, and healing takes twice as long. Naturally takes twice as long. So that's kind of a big one. That's really the sneaky, really bad part of the disease, is less about the to hit part than the fact that you cannot be healed magically. That's a big, like, whoa, that's gonna potentially, if you're a frontline fighter, even if you're like, oh, I'm only -2, I can roll with that. I got a +2 sword. Oh, that's okay. But it's like, no, now anytime you get hurt, no potions, no whatever, no spells, you're gonna be stuck that way. But you're only gonna have it for 1d6 days. Of course, someone can use Cure Disease and cast it, and he can save you earlier. You get the severe portion, now it's -4, and it will last longer. And then if it's terminal, it's -6, and you're gonna die in 2 to 24 days unless you have a Cure Disease. And then finally, we have this concept of exhaustion. Basically, you lose a bunch of rations, potentially. If you don't have any rations to lose, or if, say, you only had 2 days of rations, but you lost 6, then you pick up levels of exhaustion, and then levels of exhaustion give you -1 penalties and all to hit and damage rolls, and then each one takes you a day to recover. Hey, here's a hobo that says that I think I might have convinced them to go with something like this over their original idea. Well, I wasn't trying to convince you, but cool. Let me know how if you end up rolling this into an actual game, let me know how it works. I will probably finagle this a bit and write it up into something that's more formalized, but hopefully, this kind of gives you an idea if you're running into West March's game and you want to do some kind of escape mechanic and you're not happy with the ones that are out there already or whatever. I mean, we just kind of mucked around about an hour and we came up with our own system, including coming up with these, creating some conditions that we needed, and a little exhaustion mechanic. So yeah, I think this was fun. I've never played or run a West Marches game. It would be great to do at some point because I really like the whole open table bit from those kind of back in the day gaming clubs kind of play. I'd love to do. Just haven't been in position to do it, but maybe I will someday. If you do, if you use this, if you use some other thing, if you play West Marches, love to hear how your game's going as a player, as a referee, however it's going. And I think with that, I'm going to call it a stream. I should be around tomorrow, probably being early. I do have to go out of town again tomorrow, but I'll be around in the early part of the day, so I might try to stream in the early part. We shall see. But other than that, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I'll talk to you later. Bye now.